Okay, my friends around the world, how are you doing? I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, and the reason I put this heart around my head is because this is called love bombing. Anytime you're willing to deliver so much potency and so much wisdom to a person that you know isn't ready to hear it, but you know it's going to rock their world, and you just do it anyway, I call it love bombing. I'm actually the founder of the love bombing cult from outer dementia. I'm actually the co-founder, the one and only co-founder, but that's a whole long story. You're gonna have to go back and read my blogs on that. So I'm the one and only co-founder of the love bombing cult from outer dementia, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about access consciousness, which I think is an incredible religion. Did I just say that? No. It's an incredible healing modality. And my question on this video is access consciousness a religion, or is it access consciousness a cult, or is access consciousness just a healing modality, or what? So now the reason I would say it's more leaning towards a religion, which is good, and it could be called a cult, which is not bad, just like I did a video on is SGI a cult, or is Soka Gakkai a cult, which I've been a member of all my life, and whether it is or not, I don't really care. It was just it's just an interesting point of view if you think it is or it isn't. Because cults, just like the witches and the Wizard of Oz, there's good cults and bad cults. There's good witches and bad witches. So cult is just a definition, and all definitions are limitations. And all limitations, if you define something, you're going to limit your ability to receive from it. If you define it as a cult, you're going to say, I'm not going to receive it because I don't want to join a cult. If you define it as a religion and you don't like religion, then you're not going to receive it as a religion. But if you define anything as a religion, which I define capitalism as a religion, I define socialism as a religion, I define all cultures are cults and they're religions. So nationalism, patriotism, they're all religions. Scientism, which is the belief that physical reality is all there is, and all the expectations, judgments, conclusions, projections, rejections of all the scientists in the world that believe that physical matter proves that something exists because it seems real, but they don't know that it's real because they know it's 99.99999% space, but it's nothing, and they think the thing that does exist doesn't exist, but it does exist, but it might exist. All this bullshit. It's a religion. Nothing exists unless you define it as existing, and you align and agree with it as existing, and you believe that it's existing, and then okay, it exists. But I don't exist. This video doesn't exist. My millions of YouTube viewers don't exist. My 4,000 followers on the YouTube don't exist, and my music doesn't exist, and my 4 albums I released don't exist. My healing modalities that I use, they don't exist. Access consciousness doesn't exist. If you believe in scientism, that believes that nothing exists, because anyway. So I'm not going to go on into that, but if you define religion as what people define religion as, then maybe access consciousness could be called a religion. So let's look at some definitions. I'm going to go online right now. Define religion. Now, knowing as the founder of Access Consciousness, Gary Douglas, says that all definitions have been changed to suit the purpose of the control of language after World War II, I think it was. So you have to go back to I think a dictionary that's much thicker, back from 1944 before that, and then you can actually find the true definitions. But I'm just going to go online for now. If any of you guys have those fat books and you want to put down the definition in those fat books before 1940, whatever, when they changed the language to control people, to make everyone speak the language of Babel or whatever, then go for it. But anyway, it says, the belief in or worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. So if this is the definition of religion, then Buddhism isn't a religion. But I've practiced Buddhism all my life, and I believe it's a religion. It just depends on your definition. That definition I don't like. So if that's the definition of religion, then access consciousness isn't a religion. Okay, but here's a few other definitions. A pursuit or interest in which someone ascribes supreme importance. Okay, so it's actually, if that's the definition, but I don't like that definition, then Buddhism isn't a religion, and because nothing is supremely important. Well, actually, I would say if this is the definition, a pursuit or interest in which someone ascribes supreme importance. Okay, so in Buddhism, what do we claim has supreme importance? We say life. Buddhism, access consciousness would say consciousness. I think those definitions are synonymous. So in order to be alive, you have to be conscious. That's at least what. Once you're consciously dead, and your body's still moving, they can still say you're alive, I guess. But there's some kind of consciousness allowing your body to move, even though that your cognitive mind's not working, or your so consciousness is not what some people define as consciousness, as something to do with your thinking and your peanut upstairs, which is just a calculating machine that can only regurgitate the algorithms of the past, which are all the assumptions, all the predictions, all the expectations, all the judgments, all the conclusions, all the rejections, all the separations, all the linearity, all the concentricity of all the form, structures, and significance of everything you thought existed and didn't exist and could exist and couldn't exist, based on all the conditioning of your ancestors and your religion and your culture and your society and all the lifetimes you've ever lived, and you've agreed with something or disagreed with it, or aligned with it, or resisted and reacted to it. All that gets stored in your little pea brain up here that you think is your consciousness. It's not your consciousness. So if you take the character for think in Chinese or Japanese, it's the same thing. It's a rice field with a heart under it. And the reason it's a heart under it is because the mystics in India and in China and Japan and all the people who created language, they knew that the heart was the actual true center of consciousness, or the center of being. That's why they called it Qi, which is the force. This energy of knowing, being, perceiving, receiving, which acts as consciousness, ascribes supreme importance to becoming more conscious. So in that definition, you can say access consciousness, because it's a pursuit or interest in which someone ascribes supreme importance. It should say to something. A pursuit or interest in which someone ascribes supreme importance. So the pursuit or the interest in access consciousness is to become fully conscious. And in the same is it true of Buddhism. We call it enlightenment. In Access, they call it conscious. It's exactly why they called the Buddha, because he was a woken one. He was awake. He was awake to his infinite consciousness, which he called enlightenment. That's what it became in the English language. You have to go back to all the Sanskrit and change to Chinese, change to Japanese, come into English, and however you get it to there. Everyone says it's enlightenment, but those are all just limited perspectives because they're all definitions. Let me take a drink. So, if that's the definition, that's good. I used the ABC definition that was in one of the books by the guy who wrote Da Vinci Code. What's the author of Da Vinci Code? Anyway, the ABC definition of religion by author of Da Vinci Code. Let me see if it comes up, because I forgot the definition. I don't have that book with me. It's in Japan. I left it there. I need to go get some books. One of the reasons I want to go back to Japan to see my wife and daughter is to get some books that I left that I don't have access to now, because I don't have a library here like I did in Japan. I have other libraries. I've been going to the regular library, but I don't have the libraries I had that I collected over the 13 years I was in Japan. So it doesn't say. ABC definition of religion. By Dan Brown, I'll say. Okay, by Dan Brown. I remember when I read that, in that ABC definition of religion from Dan Brown, I have a video about it. That's the only thing that comes up. So you're going to have to watch that video. But if you... Oh, here we go. ABC of religion. The lost symbol. Okay, so there's in The Lost Symbol, which is one of the books I read that I got this definition from. Let me go to find ABC. Okay, the ABC of religion. Okay, religion assures salvation. So, what is salvation in access consciousness? Access consciousness' salvation is that you won't be causally incarcerated, causally inculcated, causally um, in the causal reality of limitation if you become fully consciousness. So their salvation is if you become fully conscious, you'll no longer have to buy into the bullshit crap of society, of living on this planet, of human indoctrination into limitation and bullshit. You'll be able to be free. You'll be able to be liberated, like Buddhism teaches you, from the fundamental darkness of life. In Buddhism, we say greed, anger, and ignorance. You'll be liberated from the three poisons, and you'll be fully conscious or enlightened, and you'll attract all the good in your life, and all the bad will be extinguished from your life. That's where both Buddhism and access consciousness fits this definition of the ABC of religion, is that A, it assures salvation. The salvation of human indoctrination and bullshit is what basically access consciousness does. Okay, B is belief in a precise theology. Now, the theology of access consciousness hasn't yet been fully codified because the founder hasn't yet died. And in all religions, the founder has to first die before you can codify all the religions. So once and I loved Dane here, and I love Gary Douglas, and I love access consciousness. So anything I say that makes you think I'm degrading them or degrading their religion is an interesting point of view that you have that I don't subscribe to. I love them, and I love their religion, and I love their theology, but it hasn't been fully codified. But they do have the the 10 commandments, which they should take one of those commandments and throw it out, which is the use of drugs, because what you define as a drug and what isn't a drug is a value judgment. I drink coffee. That's a drug. Occasionally, I experiment in medicinal plants of the earth that I think are mind expanding and heart expanding and consciousness expanding. The founder of Access Consciousness doesn't yet believe, and he also believed that way about alcohol. He said all alcohol is bad, it all makes you unconscious, until he went to Italy one day and he stayed in this town where they had either red or white for breakfast, red or white for lunch, red or white for dinner. And you said, what do you mean? Can I get water? They said, no, we save water for the grapes. The grapes are for the wine. And they said, well, can I have grape juice? No, because the grape juice is for the wine. So you can only have red or white wine for breakfast, red or white wine. So once he did that, he realized, okay, he still can be conscious by drinking a little red wine or white wine for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, because he did it for whatever 10 days. So I've done medicinal plants since I was 12 years old, and I realized I can still be fully conscious even doing medicinal plants. And there's a level to the control that you have based on your body's response to those medicinal plants and how much you should or shouldn't take, which I always muscle test. So if I muscle test, do medicinal plants help me become more conscious? I get a yes. In Access Conscious, you say, truth, do medicinal plants help me become more conscious? And I get a lightness, feeling like yes, orgasmic, beautiful, okay. So in my world, the 10 commandments, that one commandment that you should never use drugs, thou shalt not use drugs. If you use caffeine in your coffee, if you occasionally drink alcohol, then you're completely a liar if you say that other people shouldn't do medicinal herbal substances like marijuana, like ayahuasca, like peyote, like cactus, San Pedro cactus, like mushrooms of many different kinds that are psychoactive. Anyway, I don't have any belief against those. I don't define those as drugs, though. I define drugs as anything synthetically created by a guy in a white coat to sell you from some pharmaceutical corporation to get you addicted to their money-making scheme. Now, I grow my own herbal substances, and I don't get involved in the money-making machine of the cult of pharmacology. So, to me, that's a religion. Okay, so let's go to the B. So that's the theology. If you follow their theology, it is a theology. If you want to know more about that, I'll go into that. But it's a good theology. Just like Buddhism, I follow the theology of Buddhism, which is based on the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, which were based on the oral transmitted teachings of the historical Buddha, which weren't put down into writing until hundreds of years after he died, possibly 150 years or more, were the beginnings, but then they morphed over time to finally get to the final teachings, which are the Lotus Sutra. So some people say, oh, then they were never really practiced by the historical Buddha because they weren't written during his lifetime. Well, nothing was written during his lifetime. So if you practice anything that's Buddhism and you think it's coming from his word of the mouth of the founder because someone wrote it down at that time, no, there was no written language. The first written language in India was created by the monks who wanted to take the teachings that they orally transmitted and put them into writings. Okay, so anyway, that's your theology. Now, C. What is C? C is converting non-believers. In order to be successful at Access Consciousness, you have to convert non-believers. How do you convert non-believers? You have to get a lot of people to your webinars who pay. You have to get a lot of people to your bars classes who pay. You have to get a lot of people to your classes that pay. I have nothing wrong with the idea of paying for the hard work that people do. I've been in Buddhism all my life, and I've never paid any person to teach me Buddhism. I have never paid to go to any Buddhist meeting in my life. I did pay to go to the Florida Nature Culture Center 4 or 5 times, and the reason I paid is I paid for the fact that I'm going to stay in a resort-like environment. I paid the airline ticket to get there, and I paid to receive the food from incredible chefs that volunteered their time to go there for free to enjoy the Florida Nature Culture Center. So I paid just for the cost of the facilities, the cost of that. I didn't pay for the leaders that were invited there who also paid to go there to get a salary or anything like that. There are staff members, and I know I have friends that I was friends with most of my life that work at the Florida Nature Culture Center. They get paid a staff salary. That's completely reasonable. But no one's getting super rich because more people are going to FNCC. And no one's getting more rich because I've been in the greatest districts who do the most shakubuku. The people aren't getting rich because they're doing shakubuku. Well, they are getting rich because they're doing shakubuku, but they're not getting rich because people are paying them to do shakubuku or people are paying them to receive the gohans and everything like that. That's all administrative fees. They're getting rich because they're creating fortune, which we'll talk about the difference between fortune and access consciousness and fortunousness in Buddhism, fortune in Buddhism. Okay, so now that this definition ABC fits access consciousness and fits Buddhism, then I would say that access consciousness and Buddhism are both religions. Now, if you define it under the ABCs of religion that Dan Brown uses, then is it possible for you to have 2 religions? Most people think it isn't, because a lot of people that start practicing access consciousness, I say practicing, because it is a practice, just like Buddhism is a practice. You get up and you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you do Gongyo, you introduce other people to the Buddhism because you not only care about changing your life, but you try to change other people's life. That's the practice of Buddhism, and you study Buddhism, just like you study access consciousness if you're becoming part of the access consciousness cult or religion that calls itself a healing modality. Okay, now where do I draw the line between Buddhism and access consciousness as my religious life choice? Because I've been now following the works of Gary Douglas, following the works of Dane Here, listening to Access Consciousness classes from Rika Zimmerman, who to me was my main teacher in Access Consciousness until she quit Access Consciousness. But she was the reason I became a follower of Access Consciousness, and I can say follower in the sense of like I'm a follower of Buddhism as a religion, as a philosophy. And because the great thing about Rika Zimmerman is she decided to leave Access Consciousness and teach everything that she learned in Access Consciousness by calling it a different name, which she called it Adventures in Oneness. And then she slowly started adding in her own revelated understanding of reality, which became more and more godlike and more and more Christianity based, which turned me totally off because that religion to me is toxic. That whole religion of something outside of you is being so much superior to yourself, whether it's the universe, whether it's the mystic law. We don't consider in Buddhism that the mystic law or the Gohonzon or Buddhism or the Buddha is something outside of you. It is actually you in your truest sense. So it is the real you that you're hiding behind all the other yous and all the other masks you wear in life. And once you become more in tune with the real you, the more Buddhist-like you become, the more enlightened you become. And the same with Access Consciousness. The more you realize you are the infinite joy, the infinite bliss, the infinite orgasmicness that this universe has been waiting for 40 billion years or more, the more you experience ease, joy, and glory in everything you do. So in that sense, I just made a video about the 3 proofs in Buddhism. I would say that Access Consciousness also has documentary proof, theoretical proof, and actual proof, because I've practiced it for 8 years, along with practicing Buddhism, and it's actually made me become more Buddhist and more understanding of the Buddhist sutras, more understanding of the philosophy of Buddhism, because I feel that Access Consciousness is actually teaching the final teachings of Buddhism and calling it Access Consciousness. Because where did the final teachings of Buddhism come from? It came from the full consciousness of your heart energy, which is what Gary Douglas and Dane Here are tuning into when they become truly who they be, which is infinite. And that's exactly what the Buddha did. So it's not something that because this guy of 25,000 years ago discovered it, that you can't discover it within yourself now. And Gary Douglas can't discover it, and Dane Here can't discover it. And everyone else who practices Buddhism or practices Access Consciousness can't discover on their own. Do you have to go to an Access Consciousness class? No, actually I have never been to an Access Consciousness class. I've listened to millions of classes. I've had many Access facilitators on my radio show, Major Tim to Ground Control, which used to be called From Time Without Beginning, and I just haven't had the need and necessity to pay anyone to teach me Access Consciousness, because I've been part of the barter system most of my life, and I barter for the wisdom. People share it with me because I barter my wisdom with them, so they share these classes with me. And when I first started bartering and sharing all of Rika Zimmerman's classes, none of them said on the end of them, "This is copywritten by Rika Zimmerman, all rights reserved." But now all of Dane Here and all of Gary Douglas's class all start with that, because of me, the rebel I truly be from time without beginning, into the infinite future with total ease, joy, and glory, who loves Access Consciousness and doesn't feel like being causally incarcerated in the limited construct of money as the sole means of receiving Access Consciousness, which Gary Douglas thinks if anyone doesn't pay enough money, they're not willing to receive it. Well, hey, I'm willing to receive all of the awarenesses that I've been receiving for the last 8 years from Access Consciousness and more into the infinite future with total ease without having to ever pay for a class. Now, will I pay for a class? Yes, I will. But I've actually asked, finally, after living in Japan for 13 years, I found an Access Consciousness facilitator that lived close enough to me that she can do my bars for me. And I requested her services to do bars, because I haven't had anyone who is certified physically do bars on my head. But I had someone who I taught, because I bought the $40 video. So I did pay. I paid Access Consciousness $40 to send me a video in Japan, because there were no facilitators. And with that video, I was able to teach my friends and have them teach me bars, and we didn't pay each other anything. We just gave each other, we gifted and received it from each other, and it was beautiful. And it was, I wanted actually a certified facilitator to do it. She said, I'm sorry, I've had too many men request my services, and my clinic that she does her massages and does healing at is a women's clinic, and she's been allowing men to come in on special days, but too many men have requested her service and she can't do it anymore, so she's sorry she can't work with me. So I said, well, is there any other way I can pay you, because you're the only facilitator within 100 miles or more in Niigata, Japan, backside of Japan, where they used to exile people that I lived for 9 or plus years. Is there any other way I can pay you and get your services? She said, no, because I only work with women. So I tried, but I guess the universe doesn't want me to pay a body facilitator to do my bars yet. Because maybe the universe knows I'm infinite being and I can do my bars by myself by just being the joy, peace, and glory that I truly be, and the orgasmic as I truly be, that is the 9 trannies fully actualized, that I am every day on my videos and on my music and in my work and in my life. That just allows my bars to turn on and just dissolve all the crap that was stuck in there for billions of years. Anyway, so that's my response to, is access consciousness a religion? Now, I want to know what you guys think. Can I practice 2 religions at the same time? If access consciousness is a religion, and if Buddhism is a religion, is it possible to do 2 at the same time? Well, I've been doing it. I don't feel like I'm getting any bocce because my life is growing, and I feel like my understanding of Buddhism is becoming stronger, and my connection with people in the SGI is becoming stronger because of my mind expanding. It's kind of like a drug, access consciousnness, except you don't have to ingest it through your mouth. You just ingest it by listening and receiving it. Okay, I love you all. I hope you try one of the cults or religions I mentioned on this video, and you realize whether it's a cult or a religion, it works, which is the 3rd proof, actual proof. It changes your life, and that's all that really matters. All definitions are just limitations. So if you use a definition of cult, religion, science to determine whether you're going to do something or whether you're not going to do something, then you're limiting your receiving and you're limiting your ability to expand your consciousness, and I feel sorry for you. So get a life. Okay, I love you. Peace out.